Batman the Animated Series has something of a tradition of creating brand new original characters that would eventually find their way to the mainline Batman comic books. The most obvious example of this is Harley Quinn, who made her debut in the BTAS episode The Joker's Favour, and has since gone on to take over the entire DC universe in the roughly 25 years since she transitioned to the comics. Other original characters such as Renee Montoya, the Condiment King and Lockup have also found their way into the comics, but with varying degrees of fanfare. However, there's one beloved BTAS original character who is incredibly popular with the fans and has made the jump to the mainline comic books, but he just hasn't been able to manifest that same level of fandom outside of the show. So let's try to figure out why. Let's talk about the Grey Ghost. So first things first, the Grey Ghost is a somewhat derivative character, heavily inspired by the pulp heroes that predated superheroes like The Shadow and Doc Savage. And it should be noted that, unlike other original characters, the Grey Ghost was an in-universe TV show character, played by the actor Simon Trent. Armed only with his fists and his wits, the Grey Ghost's episodic adventures would thrill children across the world, including a young Bruce Wayne. He wasn't an actual costumed superhero or a tragic villain, he was a character in a TV show played by a sympathetic actor. And I think that's the key point that has prevented him from taking a foothold in the DC universe. There are only so many stories you could tell about an actor that played a heroic character on a TV show in a fictional universe. Another factor in his popularity is the casting of the Grey Ghost. Now, it does a lot of the heavy lifting with the role, and voice acting just doesn't really translate to the written page. I don't think it would be controversial of me to say that the main reason why the Grey Ghost is so beloved by the BTAS fans is because of the additional layer this voice acting adds to the character, and that comes from the man who voiced him, Adam West, the star of the 1960s Batman TV series. Many of the people that worked on BTAS grew up with the 60s Batman show, and for some, Adam West's voice was the definitive voice of Batman. So it was fitting then to bring him in for an episode that revolved around Batman's childhood hero, the Grey Ghost. It was doubly fitting because, much like the Grey Ghost actor Simon Trent, Adam West would also struggle to escape from the shadow of his most famous role. In the episode, we see Trent struggling to pay his bills and failing to get roles because casting agents could only see him as the Grey Ghost. This causes Trent to explode in anger as he lashes out at his collection of Grey Ghost merchandise. For those of us familiar with Adam West's struggles, we could easily see West doing the same thing. For West, the role of Batman opened many doors for him, but over time it would become a hindrance to his career. It seemed like casting agents just couldn't get past the idea of Adam West as Batman, and he reportedly lost out on many roles in the following years because of his close association with the campy, zany antics of the Caped Crusader. On the subject of typecasting, Adam West would say,
"I was doing things I wasn't very comfortable doing. I became very self-destructive. That came from being disillusioned and frustrated. I was bitter when I realized Batman had caused me to lose a lot of roles afterwards."
After the show ended in 1968, Adam West would spend years making public appearances as Batman, including filming a road safety commercial for us over here in the UK, and allegedly getting shot out of a cannon at a fair in Indiana, although there are some doubts that this actually happened. He would also voice Batman in animation, including 1977's The New Adventures of Batman and 1985's The Superpowers Team, a continuation of the Super Friends franchise. Unfortunately for West, these shows were very closely tied to the 1960s version of Batman, not the Dark Avenger that we like in this day and age. So getting back to the episode, Beware the Grey Ghost. Batman enlists Simon Trent's help after a criminal replicates a scene from an old episode of The Grey Ghost, in which a mad bomber holds the city to ransom. Unfortunately, all of the episodes of the show have seemingly been lost to time. The curse of physical media. And as a child, Batman fell asleep midway through the episode, so he doesn't remember how it ended. As a result of this, Batman asks Simon Trent if he can recall how the Mad Bomber carried out his scheme. Trent is initially reluctant to get involved, but reveals that he still has physical copies of each episode of the show, and he hands them over to Batman. Later, he decides to don the costume of the Grey Ghost, thankfully it still fits, as he helps Batman get to the bottom of the scheme, and in the process earns a new generation of fans who come to celebrate the Grey Ghost. All too often, episodes of BTAS end on a sour note, with the villain of the show weeping on their knees with only Batman to comfort them. But in this case, the episode ends on a much more positive note, with Simon Trent embracing his status, and Batman gets to tell him how much his work meant to him. I'm sure this sentiment was likely shared by any BTAS fan that had the fortune of meeting Kevin Conroy at conventions. I managed to meet him once and surprised myself by not blubbing about how important the show was to me. In researching this video, I was pleased to read that Adam West had a similar epiphany about his time as Batman.
"I decided that since so many people love Batman, I might as well love it too. So I began to re-engage myself with Batman. And I saw the comedy, I saw the love people had for it, and I just embraced it."
The Grey Ghost would only appear in one episode of BTAS, but he would be referenced several times in the tie-in comic books. In Justice League Unlimited 28, a Christmas special, the Flash buys Batman a Grey Ghost action figure after the Phantom Stranger shows him Batman's painful childhood and the joy a Grey Ghost action figure once briefly brought him. Similarly, in the Batman Adventures Continue short story from the DC Winter Special, Robin tracks down a Grey Ghost action figure for Batman and stops Mr. Freeze from going on a rampage in the process. I think by this point Batman's Batcave is probably full of Grey Ghost action figures, but he graciously thanks everyone that provides him with a new Grey Ghost figure. Simon Trent would only appear in one comic, Batman Adventures Volume 2 number 14. This issue details how the Grey Ghost was a childhood favourite of another significant character, Matt Hagen, who would go on to become Clayface. In the modern era, a new Grey Ghost movie is being made, and Clayface is determined to play the part because Simon Trent's performance as the Grey Ghost had inspired him to become an actor. Clayface would audition hundreds of times with hundreds of different faces and voices, and eventually got the part. And he had the pleasure of acting alongside his hero Simon Trent. However, when Trent's old-fashioned hammy acting causes Clayface to lose his temper, things begin to unravel. With his secret exposed, Clayface kidnaps Trent, and his disappearance draws the attention of Batman. It's quite a short story, only 17 pages long, but I found it quite enjoyable. In more recent years, Simon Trent has appeared in a number of non-DCAU comics. In the mainline universe, he was introduced in Gotham Academy as the school's drama teacher. Initially acting as a nice nod to BTAS, he would go on to have a slightly more prominent role in a later storyline, where his production of Macbeth was thought to be haunted. However, it was revealed that his play was being sabotaged by his rival Basil Carlo, Clayface. The two would have an act-off while the kids of the Academy figured out the best way to fight Clayface. It was kind of amusing, and I know a lot of Batman fans don't enjoy the more light-hearted, young adult-focused antics of Gotham Academy, but I thought it was pretty cool. Simon Trent would also appear in Batman White Knight Harley Quinn, a miniseries set in the White Knight universe, as the almost victim of the serial killer the Starlet. As with many characters in the White Knight universe, Trent bore a strong similarity to his BTAS counterpart, even going as far as having copies of Phantom City Creative and George Kalsudis' BTAS prints on his walls. Trent's only role in this was fighting off the serial killer that had been targeting old movie stars living in Gotham. After that, we don't see him again. So those are all of Simon Trent's appearances, but the Grey Ghost makes an appearance in the third volume of Batgirl, featuring Stephanie Brown as Batgirl, from 2009 to 2011. In issue 9, we're introduced to a mad bomber. Get it? Johnny C, who tries to blow up the train to remind people how awful Gotham is. Batgirl, unsurprisingly, makes short work of him. Johnny, real name Clancy Johnson, would take a shine to Batgirl and turn up in issue 15 calling himself the Grey Ghost. He thinks of himself as Batgirl's protector, or guardian angel as he puts it, but he tends to get in the way more than anything else. Armed with a shotgun that fires rubber bullets and the ability to lift his cape to shine a blinding light, bringing a whole new meaning to the act of flashing, yikes, the Grey Ghost would wind up getting murdered by Batgirl's villains after he tried to negotiate with them. Given that this was his likely planned fate from his inception, you can see why they didn't name him Simon Trent. Taking a beloved character from BTAS and making him an over-enthused fanboy that borders on stalking, negotiates with villains and winds up getting murdered is not really the kind of thing that you want to do to get the fans on your side. Now, of course, this all took place prior to the New 52 and Rebirth, and God knows what happened with DC Metal. So really, I'm not even certain if this is still in continuity anymore. But overall, I think that the problem is that the entire concept of the Grey Ghost is one note. Without Adam West's voice acting to go along with it, it kind of falls a bit flat. He only really works in certain stories involving the entertainment industry, as seen in Gotham Adventures and Batman White Knight. His other appearances are so-so. I can completely understand why this character hasn't made a big impact outside of his appearances in BTAS. Some characters just don't translate so well from the screen to the page without drastic changes. And by that point, if the comic book version is so different from the on-screen original, I have to wonder why they don't just come up with their own unique character. Fortunately, whatever they decide to do in the comics will never change the BTAS original, which serves as some of Adam West's finest work. Okay, so that's the end of the video. Thank you for watching if you made it all the way through. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to do all the usual YouTube stuff. You know, like, share, subscribe, comment, etc. I have enabled the thanks button, so if you really enjoyed it and you have the means, please feel free to fling a couple of dollars my way because it really helps improve the production value on these videos. So this video about the Grey Ghost kicks off my holiday coverage as we head into the Christmas period. Next week I'll be back looking at one of Batman's most chilling foes, Mr. Freeze. Hope to see you then.